Hello class, welcome to Developing a Global Vision Chapter 4. We're cruising right along. We have just a few models and frameworks that we're going to be learning in this chapter. We'll definitely have quite a few really cool activities that will break this down. There's I feel like it's pretty complex, the amount of things that we have to learn in this section, but it's trying to cross over with some other tools like CREST that we learned in other chapters. So our learning objectives for today's lecture is understanding and discussing the importance of global marketing. As you mostly know, the world is getting smaller, and so we need to make sure that we have tools to look beyond our borders. Describe environmental considerations, which we already have some tools for, but we got to think, not just locally, but globally. Identify 5 different marketing entry strategies where we'll spend quite a bit of time just going through them and making sure that we have examples. We will also have new examples presented to us in class, which will, I think, really help lock it in. And then we're just going to discuss that, just a reminder that the practice marketing simulation is going to become real. And so you all need to have your own accounts, and that you need to make sure that it's linked up with the link that I have provided in the course outline or on Blackboard underneath the project. Okay, so global marketing. Global marketing is marketing that targets markets throughout the world. I think this is quite obvious. As Canadians, you can see this a lot where businesses take their product to the United States, but also globally. We definitely have a trade deficit, meaning that more products come into Canada than we send out, but we are always trying to support our organizations in Canada to sell to external places in the world, which we do with our lumber, we do it with our oil, we do it with a lot of our products, including like electronic arts based here in Burnaby, where we make video games. So we have a big IT sector that produces a lot of digital goods that are exported, and we need to know what kind of tools we can do when we can use when we're evaluating markets that we might want to take our product outside of our borders. So having a global vision recognizes and reacts to the international marketing opportunities, as you might imagine, based on culture or many of the CREST categories. You need to evaluate, will your product, even if it's doing well in one country, do well in another country, okay? Using effective global marketing strategies that we're going to talk about, and awareness of threats from foreign competitors, which I think we'll have some pretty interesting discussions. And specifically, we're going to be talking about some of the things that has happened in the EU, which I think is pretty interesting, but that will be happening in our class discussion. So why would a company want to go global? Well, I think the obvious answer is that they want to seek more revenue, but there's also threats about going global that we need to talk about. Some key reasons to go global is maybe there's a unique advantage. Maybe that say that you're Tesla and you're creating these wicked awesome cars that everybody wants and there's a high demand, but that you need a lithium supply. Well, lithium, if you didn't know, only exists in a few countries. So if all of a sudden everything in the world is going to be electrified, well, maybe Tesla in the near future, in the not so near future, might be looking to go global and to purchase some of their value chain to protect their ability to make batteries. So there's some reasons to go there. Maybe you just want to sell more products, you want to make additional profits, which we talked about before. Maybe the unique advantage, which is the lithium battery example. Exclusive market information to exploit. So maybe you have some key competitive advantage that would only exist in a certain market, or to achieve economies of scale. Economies of scale is a very important term to understand. It is basically the benefits that you get by producing larger amounts of your goods. So you can imagine if I am selling cupcakes and I make them out of my house, I can make up maybe 1,000 cupcakes a day. But it probably costs me almost $1 a cupcake because of all the electricity I'm using, all of the resources and the inefficiencies of running around my kitchen. Take that into a professional bakery, and all of a sudden I have ovens that are very, they don't use much electricity. I have all the gear, I have machinery that is helping me bust out those cupcakes, so I can probably get the price down to maybe from $1 to maybe a penny a cupcake, and that's because of economies of scale. The bigger your business gets, the more you can afford automation software, the less physical labor that you need. Maybe I can buy sugar in bulk, and so I'm getting it at a cheaper price. All of those reasons are around economies of scale, which is an economics term that's very important in marketing. So, the global environment. If we take the CREST model, what are global environment considerations a company may need to be aware of? Now, of course, we're going to see some presentations on this, But some things that you do need to think about: different competitors in the market, the type of competition, right? If you want to take your product to China, for example, the labor is much more affordable there, and there's different ways of selling there. I don't know if you know this, but their apps like WhatsApp are so integrated into their system. You can buy your groceries on that, you can buy food delivery, you can do dating apps, all within that one app. Well, you need to really understand that marketplace if you think that you're going to be able to compete. And many of our largest companies have tried to go to China and compete, and the competition is really harsh. Not just because of competitiveness, but also regulatory. Because Google went there, they've tried their best. But actually, if I know that a lot of students might not know this, is that if you fly into China, good luck using your Gmail. Unless you have a VPN, Gmail, Facebook. I have a Google phone, and so I had to make sure I had a VPN ready when I go over there to do my trade for my business, or else I can't access anybody in the outside world on a basic internet system. Because what am I going to do? Am I going to go onto Chrome and download another system? No, Chrome's banned there. So without a VPN, your phone's kind of useless. And that moves into regulations. Different government policies, they regulate certain things. Legal considerations, trade regulations. There's a lot going on. Whoops, sorry, let me go back. There's a lot going on with tariffs. The 25% tariffs on all goods from China. Before COVID-19 happened, this was a huge deal between the Trump administration in the United States and China. A lot of other countries are benefiting from this, Vietnam being one, that is getting massive influx of factories moving from China down to Vietnam to avoid these tariffs, because 25% increased cost that directly comes off your bottom line is worth the investment to avoid. Also trade agreements and organizations. The World Trade Organization, NAFTA, maybe the World Health Organization right now might be in part of this regulatory body. Some of your goods can't ship. Some of your employees can't move around the world. So you can see that when you start going into a global mindset, that this CREST system works exactly the same. Just to move a little bit quicker, economic development, gross national income. We talked earlier about your discretionary income, right? Like the amount of money that you have to spend. In the West, we are known to have a very wealthy society that has lots of discretionary income. That is not the same in every other country. So does the country that you're going into, can they afford a $7 latte? They might not be able to. You might have to change your marketing mix and think about the products and the price and what you're going to actually sell when you go to a different market. There's cultural differences. There's so many great examples about where a marketing is botched, an advertising campaign that didn't meet the culture. It would be really great if the students are presenting next class to come up with an example of this. It would be very entertaining. It's always a class winner. Or if any of our other if any students know of examples, please bring them to class. I would love to see them. That would be a really good way to participate in our class. If you haven't answered any questions or anything like that, maybe you could bring an example to next class. And then technological level of technological development. If you have a cell phone business or apps, if you have apps like Uber that really, really depend on fast internet that's available anywhere, well, if you go into a country that doesn't have that available, well, you're going to spend millions and millions of dollars entering a country that can't offer your service. So marketing, you can look at it from a CREST standpoint, and that covers a lot of it. But it doesn't cover it all, and this is just a tool, so it can't cover it all. It never covers it for any business. But specifically when you're going global, the external environment doesn't really cover natural resources. And so that lithium-ion battery that I was talking about with Tesla, I think Chile has one of the biggest mines in the world. I might be wrong. There's another one, I think, in Africa somewhere, but I think there's only 2 or 3 major mines in the entire planet. And so natural resources are very, very important, the dependence and the independence on companies based on those natural resources. So that's something that isn't covered in CREST. It's just one example. There's many, many more, just because there's infinite amounts of businesses, infinite amount of products and services. So don't think that CREST can cover everything, but it's a great starting tool to figure it out. Like I said, we're going to have a discussion about the European Union, but I'm going to save this for in class. Entering the global marketplace. There's many marketing strategies. You need to know them all. So there's exporting, licensing and franchising, contract manufacturing, joint venture, and direct investment. I think we're going to go through them one at a time. I'm going to define them, and then I'm going to flip over and show you some examples that you might know at home just to kind of lock it in. And then we're going to bring more examples to class just to get it. But really I love asking questions about this, especially multiple choice questions, giving you a scenario, and then you have to know what it is. So it's really important that you know what these are. So let's go through them. Exporting, I think this is self-explanatory. Lots of people know this. We make Canadian maple syrup, and then all of a sudden we know that our American friends love pancakes, and so we're going to export it across the border. The big thing that you need to know is we're not changing the product at all. We're just selling it in a different market. Whereas maybe we do licensing and franchising, a legal process where a licensor agrees to let another firm use an aspect of their business. So maybe our maple syrup is super popular here in Canada, and maybe the Denny's franchise in the States, they have Aunt Jemima or something like that, and they're like, no, we want to really go to real Canadian maple syrup. Instead of us exporting our product, maybe they just slap our label onto their maple syrup, which they're already using, but now it's got the Canadian brand on it. Maybe we are actually giving them some of the product, or maybe their product has already been sourced from Canadian maple trees. So we make a licensing deal. So they're it's a little bit different than us just exporting the exact same product that we already have. Contract manufacturing is a really great example. So private label manufacturing by a foreign company. Private label is giant. It's a giant multi-billion-dollar business. I always love to ask the class, hey, who's the largest maker of pop in the entire planet? Coke or Pepsi usually comes to mind. But have you ever heard of Coca-Cola? Coca-Cola. Who the heck is that? Well, they used to have their own brand just called Cot. But do you know what President's Choice Cola is, or Walmart's brand cola, or any restaurants that have their own cola? It's probably likely that Cot is the one that is labeling their, creating and labeling their bottles private label. So Cot has got giant manufacturing processing plants so that they get the economies of scale, which we talked about it before. They can afford the machines, the same machines that Coca-Cola or a company as big as Pepsi are using. And then they go and they create a lot of different colas for smaller based companies, so that those smaller based companies can benefit from having access to huge manufacturing establishments and factories. But then they don't have to spend the same amount of money or expertise, so that they can have their own brand cola. That's called private labeling. A lot of people do this on Amazon, where they find products in China and then they just create their own brand. It's called label slapping sometimes. And if you go through Amazon, it's kind of a fun exercise to go and look at different kinds of products, and you can find that they're exactly the same. They look the same, they have the same features, but they have different brands on them, which has a lot of upside, because then you don't have to take the risk of making a new product, but it has a lot of downside too, because over the long term, if the customers start to figure out that they're all the same products anyways, it becomes a race to the bottom when it comes to your price, when you think about your 4 Ps. So of course, as long as you're making a profit, you'll make the price cheaper and cheaper and cheaper until both companies aren't making a profit. And then that turns into, well, who has the deepest pockets to last the longest before one of the companies gives up. It's not a place where I'd want to compete myself, but lots of firms do it very, very successfully. And I have lots of examples of that. We can also go into joint venture. Domestic firms joins with a foreign firm to create a new entity. This happens a lot because of rules that exist in other countries. A lot of countries don't allow foreign ownership. So if you have more than 50% of ownership, you can't do that in many countries. But still you want access to their natural resources, or you want access to their other resources, like maybe labor, for example. So then you joint venture, you create a joint venture with another company, maybe they own 51%. And joint ventures exist too, even where that kind of rule doesn't exist, where you bring expertise together. And we'll show some examples. The last is direct investment, active ownership, majority of controlling interest in a foreign firm. This has got the highest risk level. This means that you're actively investing and owning a corporation that's based out of a country. So Tesla has recently built a factory in China. That factory is owned by China. It's not a joint venture. They didn't outsource their contracting to like Panasonic or anything like that. They're not just licensing. They're not getting, a car manufacturer that already exists in China to just build the Teslas for them. And they're not exporting the Teslas, even though I think they will export some models of their Tesla. Instead, they're building it in-house, okay? So direct investment is the highest risk, but it also allows you to get the most control and gives you the highest profit. So as you're learning about exporting, licensing, and franchising, and all these different market entry strategies, right, you really want to pay attention to this grid here. And the reason we put it in this order is because what we're doing is that we're looking at what the return is, the possible return, versus the risk. If we export, right, we're talking about really, really, really low risk, but potentially low return. But not always the case, but most of the time you're going to have a lot of fees, and you're keeping your manufacturing plants. So now you're paying shipping costs on all your products. So your costs are going up, so your returns are going down. So that's why that's over here. Whereas direct investment, you're really just trying to recreate your entire factory, but now in another country. So you're trying to keep those margins high. You can imagine a Tesla, you would pay tons of shipping fees if you made them all in the States and then put them on containers and shipped them over to China, using Western wages versus Chinese wages, and no shipping costs, or much lower shipping costs. So that's the way to think about that. Okay, examples. So exporting, they're the VQA. We export tons of BC wine all over the world. Licensing and franchising. McDonald's, all of those locations are franchises, so they lower the risk of creating a brand new burger restaurant. Instead, you go to something that's trusted and true. You pay a lot of fees, so you don't make as high of profits at first, on average, because you got to give royalties and marketing dollars to the McDonald's corporation. But your chances of being successful of creating a McDonald's and going and using all of their expertise for running for 100 years means that you have a higher chance of being a successful entrepreneur in the burger business than if you just started Doug'sAwesomeBurgers.com or Doug's Burgers and Wings, This was the Coca-Cola example that we already talked about. Your logo goes here. A lot of people do this with protein powders and things like that you see. You can almost do this with anything nowadays. Again, it means that it's going to be super competitive, because if you can do it on a low entry, then I can do it. This is one of the reasons why I make protectable categories. So like my board games, Baby Dinosaur Rescue, for example, you can't just go and copy all of the Baby Dinosaur Rescue. Sure, you can make a similar game, I guess, because there's lots of similar games out there, but it has to be named something else. It has to look a different way. Whereas if you start having protein powders or colas, right? Like, why doesn't everybody start a cola company? Well, because it's already uber competitive. It's tough to enter the market. Joint ventures, there's tons that exist. Caridium partnered because they're with Microsoft and GE on a whole bunch of different projects that had to do with healthcare and technology. They all bring different things to the table. But you see this all the time. You can see it with drink producers. Starbucks, we talked about Starbucks last class. Guaranteed that they're probably partnered with Pepsi or some other, or maybe even Cott. I think it's Pepsi though, where they would partner. They don't want to. They run Starbucks restaurants. They don't run bottling corporations or distributions to stores. So that would likely be. I'm guessing right now, but that would likely be a joint partnership. If it's not that way, let me know. But you can get my point from the example. And then direct investment. Ganong is a famous Canadian chocolate family, and they definitely create chocolate factories also in Europe. They didn't want to outsource it to somebody else. They wanted to control the entire thing while bringing in all the profits that they possibly could. So, advantages and disadvantages. We talked about a lot of this. You do need to have, you see how I explained it, where it's like I came up with a few examples, and I generally know like the lowest risk to me to the highest risk, and the lowest amount of returns to the highest amount of returns. On average, it's different, obviously, case to case to case. That's all this is saying down here. I think it's a lot better that you memorize. Well, it depends how you study. If you can read through this and you can memorize this for a test, because you will be tested on it, that's great. I like the story route, so that works better for me. So I just wanted to make sure I showed it to you in another way. All right, so that is the major tools that you need to learn from Chapter 4. Again, the major things you need to remember is the importance of global marketing. Why are we even considering going global? Well, you need to know that. What risks should we consider? Environmental considerations that exist. We did the crest model to go and label out a whole bunch, but then we also realized that crest doesn't cover everything. We identified those 5 different marketing strategies just now, and then developing a global marketing mix is going to be an activity that we do next class. So I hope that you're having a wonderful week, and I will see you soon.